Welcome to the podcast. We talk about all the things that are hidden in the shadows. This is Isaac.
This is Megan.
I don't know why I thought of you talking first. This happens when we take a week off.
Yeah.
Which was not by our choice. We forgot that we had family over. Or you had family over.
Yeah, it was my family. And it was like a week thing. And anybody that knows family time knows sometimes that can be chaos. So it was a little chaotic. So we thought it would just be better to just wait a little bit, have a week regroup, and then go back into episodes. Because instead of trying to record with like 10 people in the house and stuff like that. So
Plus his room was occupied.
yes,
Yeah.
occupado.
But we're going to make it up for this week with giving you 3 episodes in one.
Yeah.
So today we talk about I consider it a listener submission episode.
No, it's not a listener submission.
Request.
It's a listener request. They wanted to for us to do a little bit of research on the subject, and then kind of put our opinion on it and our viewpoints about it, because it's something that this person definitely was intrigued by and wanted to just hear our opinion about it. So
Was it?
Sydney.
Nice. Today is all about Raw, the Law of One, and everything surrounding it. But that's today's episode. What are news flashes for this week? So you're going to get this today, which you're listening to. You're going to get Shadow Walker Part 5 on Friday. And then Dow, testimony episode, on Saturday. And if I have to give any endorsement to a listener submission story, now, I know we have the ones in the past from Barry and Mariah and Mike and Christie's testimony episodes of how we helped them. But nothing against the others. But when it comes to Dow's, her situation, her story was very dire. And you hear the emotion in her voice when she expresses her gratitude, especially how everything was before and how everything is now.
Yeah.
After we helping her, stuff like that. So,
and I think it's interesting too. You also hear the perspective of Mike in that episode.
Oh yes, he's in there as well. Yeah.
From Unknown Paranormal. We worked with him on this case, and yeah, it's super intriguing too. Like to hear like obviously us and then another paranormal team working together to help somebody, using all of our assets to the best of the ability. Like obviously your ability, my ability, plus the Unknown Paranormal's stuff as well, to be able to help somebody. So a great example of collaboration and like unity amongst other paranormal groups coming together using their best abilities to help somebody.
Now I know I said before in Shadow Walker Part 4 I wanted to almost put a year, but then I remembered when I recorded that in November of last year. And between then and now, a lot has happened. And there's a lot of context in Dow's episode that I need to do Shadow Walker Part 5 in order for you to understand. Otherwise, you're going to be clueless.
And normally, I don't know if Shadow Walker Part 4 had me in it. But
no, you were in Part 3, actually.
Yeah. So I will also be joining Isaac on Part 5 to kind of put my little 2 cents in.
Not much on Haunted Updates, other than us kind of working our abilities remotely in several different cases. Which nothing to I don't know what's the word. Nothing
out of the norm. Yeah, nothing out of the norm has.
Well, I mean, it's
happened.
Not out of the norm, but some aspects I'm going to bring up in Shadow Walker Part 5 of these, what I have been doing, helping these people remotely and stuff like that. But nothing like majorly, taking down demons or anything like that. But on to today's episode. Now, we were asked to do this, and to be honest, I had no freaking clue about this even existed. The whole Raw Law of One thing. And from what I've read and from what I've listened to, it's not a religion per se, but it's kind of in the aspects of becoming one. Because it has a deity, has a form, it has a entire perspective, a way of living, as any other religion in the entire world has. Hasn't been recognized as one, nor has it been around enough to be considered one. but it's almost like a spiritualistic form of way of thinking, and surrounding Ra, the essence of everything. According to Ra, Law of One, Ra is a supernatural being, possibly an alien from the planet Venus. This is where things get weird. That is a fifth dimensional being on the higher ranks of existence, and it falls in the same idea mindset that a lot of other monotheistic religions had in the past, where there's one direct source of everything, and everything comes from this one direct source. Now, a lot of people talked in the past, especially about the Matrix or like this and that, with different thought processes of different religions. Like, what if we are all the same entity looking at it at different perspectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially the law of one. It's essentially following down the aspects that we are all one entity, separated in many forms, gaining different perspectives on this planet, and we have to either to ascend and return back to the source itself.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is also interesting to talk about, because when you talk about people like people that have followed Dolores Cannon's work, tend to refer to this specific book, and the book itself is a series. So the Law of One material is a series of 106 conversations called sessions between Don Elkins, a professor of physics and a UFO investigator, Ra, speaking through Carla Rueckert, and Ra states that they are a sixth density social memory complex that formed on Venus about 2.6 billion years ago. So anybody that's new, the whole idea of channeling is basically she gets put under kind of like a hypnosis state and Ra comes through. A lot of the times in sessions like Dolores Cannon and stuff like that, you have where your higher self comes through. But in this case, it was Ra. And essentially, I'm guessing you can channel anything through, depending. You know what I mean? Like any kind of being, if you choose. Most people higher self.
I don't remember if it said or not, did she find Ra, or did Ra find her?
Apparently, Ra sought out them specifically to deliver this message. Apparently, there was a TikTok that I watched that went into it, because there's a lot of TikToks. And that's another thing to also mention, is a lot of the TikToks that talk about Dolores Cannon's practices and things that she found out as well also mention this book. So, like Michael Armstrong, I think, had a couple of videos talking about this book. And then there's another guy, I forgot his name at the moment, but he's like in the top 5 of those TikTokers that specifically talk about New Age, spiritual, like past lives, like that kind of stuff. And in the sessions, there's talkings about pyramids, UFOs, that kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting just to hear that perspective, I guess.
But we're not going through everything, because that would take forever. And if you want to learn more about Raw One, other than what we talked about today, there is a whole podcast dedicated to it that's at 152 episodes, still going, and each one is an hour long. So you can see why we're doing a short overview of everything we know, because it would take forever to try to get through it. But we're just wrapping it up in a short overview. So if you expect us to know everything about this, tough shit, because we're not going to go through all that.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. And we're not dedicating this whole podcast to 152 episodes to something that like this. So, but if I had to point you in direction, that'd be it.
Yeah,
so.
And probably in our episode description, we'll put the link, because Sydney was kind enough to actually send us a link that broke down all of the different conversations. And like I said, the categories go from everything from balancing to like extraterrestrials, densities, Earth history, energy centers, higher self, specific law of one, like things you should be doing during meditation, positive and negative paths, things on objects, people, pyramids, Ra itself, solar system history, tarot. Like, it's extensive. UFOs, white magic, like all of that. It goes all into that. So yeah. And this was done during, I don't think I even said this, but it was done during the 1980s, different times. There was, from 81 all the way, there's countless sessions. There's over 106, like I said, and it spans all the way to March 15th, 1984. So 3 years of this sessions. Maybe
yeah, hence why we're not short overview. But what is their edict of the law of one? What is it? What is it? The law of one say? Let's say.
Okay, so this is actually coming from what was transcribed. So I am Ra, the law of one, through beyond the limitations of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one, and that one is love and light, light and love, the infinite creator. So it's basically like we came from source, and everyone eventually goes back up into source, or God, essentially. Ra.
Yeah.
And you and I are of the same thing, but one TikTok creator said it perfectly. It was like, we are all the same recipe, but different ingredients. If that makes sense.
You made the same recipe with different ingredients. They all taste different.
That's true. Maybe I said it wrong. Maybe.
No, we're all the
same
entity looking at the same thing with different perspectives.
I guess so, yes.
If you split yourself in many, many different forums, you're trying to gather as much information you can. Why here? I don't know. There's a lot of foundations of the earth of why it's extremely perspective of gaining things, but that goes almost against Loris Cannon's idea of that you keep repeating your life over and over again until your soul reaches a higher conscience in order to go to the higher dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can see why an alien enthusiast would even be extremely interested into this whole idea, because being channeled by an alien that says, I am a high dimensional being that has existed forever from the planet Venus, and here to give man peace of mind and help mankind evolve to a higher dimension, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which you ask anyone in the spiritual world, especially in the spiritualism world, about reaching a higher density, reaching a higher consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
In is it Buddhism, Nirvana?
Yeah. Well, I
Right?
know
Hinduism.
in a lot of the TikTok videos, a lot of the comments was, because I personally don't know, like, the Buddhism, like the Dharma stuff.
Hinduism with reaching Nirvana and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but a lot of people were comparing, like, in the Raw Law of One, like, when people would talk about it on TikTok, a lot of the comments was, like, oh, that sounds just like the Buddhism version of Dharma or something like that. So I've never looked into that religion, like Buddhism. I don't know how to say that correctly.
well, yeah, I don't really see
You know what I'm saying?
Buddhism is kind of a branch off Hinduism, but Buddhist was an actual person that has perspectives and stuff like that people followed and created a very peaceful, idealistic mindset, which essentially became a religion. But Hinduism was essentially the one that had the whole reaching nirvana in a higher state of mind. You have to reach back to the source itself, which I forgot the whole term name of. When basically you reach a higher self, which that goes into a lot of different perspectives of a lot of different religions. Saying raw law one is a new concept is not true. It is almost an old concept, rethought and reimagined. Now, what makes this extremely interesting is that it comes from supposedly an alien source. Now, there was always that theory that aliens are high-dimensional beings. This allows some proof to it. Now, if you don't want to look at the spiritual side of everything, you want to look at the alien side, that makes it just as interesting. Because this is an alien being that wants humanity, or at least the souls that are within these vessels, to reach a higher consciousness in order to reach up to it. more than any alien species has done before. Does it make Ra particularly different from all the other alien species, or does it make Ra higher than them? And that's an interesting question. Now, I remember listening to different podcasts about it and stuff like that to gain a perspective on it. And they asked, one of the questions was asked of Ra, are you the Ra from Egyptian pantheon and stuff like that? And it said, yeah. But at the time, mankind was just early starting out, stuff like that. And they already had a pantheon of religions, where they had a pantheon of gods and stuff like that. And it kind of just put itself in there. And they already worshipped, the moon, the sun, the sky, the earth. They had different gods for different controls of nature and stuff like that, which did help a lot because that's what the perspective that Ra was trying to get along is, being one with everything because everything is one. So it kind of how Ra fit itself in there. Was Ra called Ra before? Probably not. It's probably called something else. But Ra was called Ra during that, and that name kind of stuck. This is my assumption, because why would in the 80s this alien come back to humanity again, trying to teach the same thing over again, but then call itself Ra?
Well, I remember reading in one of the spots of the book, it was saying that they originally came down once before, spread the message. Along the way, the message got misconstrued, and these three people, the Don Elkins and the channeler and the scribe, were specifically chosen to channel through the message again, because what they had said, or what the message that they originally dropped off, I guess. I hate to say that, that sounds weird. But like channeled through, gave to humanity, ended up getting misconstrued and then turned to something else, and it wasn't correct. So then they came back again through these three people and to retell the message, to re-get it out in the correct way.
So, in Alien Species, there it is. I was looking for the headphone jack. Sorry, I was looking for it before we were recording, and now it's right there. Anyway, my ADHD mind get distracted easily. Anyway, and now I just lost my train of thought. Damn it.
Nice.
Oh, okay, that's what I was saying. I find it interesting that Alien Species itself wanted to help humanity reach a higher self-consciousness. And it makes you think about other gods and other religions where they other alien species trying to do the same thing from different perspectives. That adds a question and a lot of other things. But what's specific about Ra is essentially creating a mindset of peace, love, and light, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where I have a problem. And it contradicts everything that we know of evil, because we have combated evil for the last 2 years and have major impacts with it, with darkness and evil entities and negative entities, regardless if it's, demonic entities, dark entity, human entities, elementals, primordial evil, witches, regardless of what it is. Just negative entities all alone. What does Ra have in mind for that? And there was an answer about negative entities. Because Ra is everything, Ra is also negative energy as is positive energy. But then the question was asked, well, how am I supposed to serve Ra if I can't serve light and negative at the same time? Ra's answer was that choice is up to you. That is the problem with humanity, is choice. You have to make the choice whether or not so. But he says, even if I worship darkness, I'm worshiping you. Right? There's a contradiction. One entity can't be everything. Now, I'm not saying if you believe in this whatsoever, you're wrong, and I might be misconstruing exactly what it was supposed to be said. But it contradicts what we know. And that's where you almost had me. You had me almost. But that one detailed difference of what we know from our perspective and stuff like that. And now someone's going to say, well, who the hell are you to say anything against it? Oh, I'm just a guy doing stuff. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, is out of this entire world. Whether you believe it or not, I have receipts from people who do. So, besides the point, that's where I was like, "But that doesn't make any sense," because I have been at war with these things for a long time now, well, a couple years now, and you're telling me that according to Raw, it is also the darkness I've been fighting, but also the light that's been on my side at the same time. So fighting itself from two perspectives, that's where I'm like, I don't know.
And that's where it confuses me, because a lot of the times people don't invite darkness in. It just, well, they do, but not purposefully.
But that was asked. Like, and Raw basically asked the person, well, what are you doing to attract darkness to you? Right? That there is some actually good points to that. Like some people with negative emotions, negative thoughts, negative thought process attract darkness to it because darkness is attracted to negative emotions, negative feelings.
Yeah, the low vibration.
But sometimes people are in depressed states not by choice of their own. They get there because of outside source problems, either from other people or other aspects in their life that create that moment of depression, sadness, anger, and whatever negative emotions. And in that moment of weakness, that is when darkness attacks. It attaches itself, especially if it finds you anywhere, and feeds on that. Or finds a place that's vulnerable and then creates a negative environment in order to strengthen those negative energies to feed on that as well. The answer was asked, well, how do I repel this negative energy and stuff like that? Raw's answer was to basically say, I respect your existence and need to be, but I'm not about that. Simply wishing it away. And from what we have learned, that does not work.
Yeah, because we've seen people that have tried, like, there was people that have reached out to us that needed help, that have done everything from saging, banishing, in Jesus' name, get away from me, that has tried salt protection, that has tried everything you can think of, brought in priests, brought in pastors, brought in stuff, and that still stays with them. So...
I had a 30-minute call with me and it's gone.
Yeah. But, I believe some people, depending if your willpower is high and your vibration is high, that could work for a little bit. But depending on the strength of...
Well, that was another thing too, is that it was basically saying that someone's willpower can create repellent for dark entities, which is true. But most people's will into belief of this stuff can't bother you also aligns with this stuff doesn't exist. Only a few people in the world who, well, I'll say a few people, but not a lot, whose will is so strong, but also belief is so strong at the same time, aren't affected by these things because they can easily combat them easily. But what I have found, the deeper you search into the paranormal, the more you dive yourself or involve yourself into this world, the bigger target you put on your back. It's almost like a light within everybody. And the more you in-depth yourself into this world, the brighter that light gets, attracting everything around you, including dark things as well.
Yeah. That's the one thing that was always told to me. I mean, granted, I've, had abilities my whole life, but one of the things that was told to me is that the more and more I embrace my ability, the lighter and lighter my light's going to shine. And like moths, a light isn't going to say, you know what, lunar moths or whatever moths, come over here. It doesn't dictate what moths come to the light. It could be any different types of moth that is attracted to light that will come to the light, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you'll have light entities that come, and then you'll also have dark. Like, as long as I can remember, I saw light spirits and I saw dark spirits. Like, it just...
And it's not like I always tell people ask us, like, is your house consistently haunted and stuff like that? Yeah, but it's not by our doing. Well, technically it is by our doing because we consistently go out there and pick fights. And what?
No, I started this episode in a good mood, but you just farted and totally turned my mood into a bad mood.
I have to pause it consistently when you have to rip ass, but you
No.
want to bring it up on me?
No, this guy farts will put you in a bad
Oh,
mood.
there's edited out Megan farts.
No, there's not.
Yes, there is. Farts in a hole in that seat where you're sitting.
I'm surprised the walls haven't caved in, begging to be let out because of all the smells that you extrude out of yourself.
This is why we have ventilation in here.
Okay, back to seriousness. Sorry.
I didn't bring it up. You did.
Right. I had to because that was atrocious.
What was I saying? Picking fights. That's right. We consistently pick fights and things come challenging us at consistent war. Hence, we've had to put enormous amount of shields and salting the ground more times enough that's probably considered a beach of salt on the ground. Because we have to consistently protect ourselves. Enough symbols and enough, I say talismans, but enough symbols in this house to well overprotect us 10 times over. But that's because we're at consistent war and we've picked a lot of fights. And then there's the problem. Gnosticism, which I've studied in. And if you ever want to branch out into other, I'm not say dead religions, but religions that didn't get their limelight, you would say. Gnosticism is one that will really blow the perspective of everything out there. And if you're a devout Christian person, I suggest not looking up Gnosticism because that would really, let's say, piss you off. But it will blow a lot of things out of the water for you. But for everyone else who, or particularly that curious, I suggest going into it. But this, a whole single entity creating everything, reminds me a lot of Gnosticism. Now, if you want to follow the timeline, Gnosticism came out long after Egyptian time, about 2,000 years afterwards. So, it could easily be influenced by the other. But would you expect a religion surrounded by one location? Mind you, the belief in the Egyptian gods was strictly to Egypt. Someone in China or someone in the old Germanic countries had no idea who Basat or Ra or Anubis were. Had no freaking clue. And you're telling me 2,000 years later, the same idea happens again? From influence from them. Right? I doubt anyone in Gnosticism knew anything about Egyptian beliefs and stuff like that. So, that's why I said my problem is with the whole Ra Law 1 thing. It's a great idea, great perspective to have, but peace and love is only acceptable when war is over. And if you want peace, prepare for war. That's a line from The Punisher. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
But it stands true. It's like, if you want peace, prepare for war, because one cannot exist without the other. So that's why I always expected, if there's a source of light in all positivity, there has to be a source of negativity and all negative, right? All negative, all positive. Opposites of each other. Balance, yin and yang, right? That's where I landed more at the perspective of things, right? There can't be just one thing of everything. There has to be 2 points of a different aspects. If there's all positive, there has to be all negative. And for what we've seen in this world so far, yeah, there's a lot of negative.
One thing that the one session that I did find very interesting, and I would love to do an episode on just pyramids, because like the paranormal side, the alien
talk about
side,
pyramids because like there's pyramids all across the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like even the like Egyptian pyramids, like because there's some theories about like aliens and stuff evolving with the pyramids.
Hey, Mexico had pyramids too, okay?
Yeah, I know. It's super interesting to kind of, but one of the things that was talked about was that pyramids could have been healing centers. Well, according to Ra, was healing centers.
Yeah.
So I thought that was super interesting. And that in itself would probably take an hour to 2 hours to cover. So we'll probably maybe take chunks out of Raw that they cover throughout like the rest of the year and into next year and kind of like cover it in different episodes. And if it's like we're covering an episode where we could mention what Raw said, we'll bring that in and say that perspective as well, because I do think some of the stuff was super interesting.
Yeah.
Like I said, they covered UFOs, they covered like white magic, they covered, which I find interesting. Like I saw that, but it was a lot to like read. And then like as you're reading, you're kind of like, what on certain subjects. So
I was saying we just give a short overview, but what we told you is the gist of everything. If you want to go more in depth with it, do it in your own time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's definitely resources out there where you can, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the podcasts that are strictly on like spiritualism and New Age religion and stuff like that, will probably cover it. Because like I said, like Michael Armstrong, he's talked about it. He's referred to it. Some other TikTokers that talk about like that. And one of the things that Raw does talk about is different densities. You know how we talk about different, like, first dimension, second dimension, third dimension, like that. They also talk about it. Just to give you guys just a little bit of insight into that. So according to Law of One, the first density is the elements. Second density is the higher plant and animal life. Third density is humans and other ET races. Fourth is positive and negative polarized. Fifth is light beings. Sixth is social memory complexes. And then seventh is approach to infinity. I just thought that was interesting. Because a lot of the times, because like when you start going into Dolores Canyon, you know, she talks about dimensions. We also talk about dimensions. There's interweaving of paranormal subjects with dimensions. And then, of course, essentially, the ultimate question to the paranormal is, where do we go after we die, right? That's essentially what you're trying to figure out. When paranormal investigators go and they are investigating, one of the questions they're investigating is, well, do we stay behind? What do we do? Like, what happens when we die? And so I think it's interesting to dive into these subjects as well, because, I mean, it's essentially kind of theorizing what could possibly happen when we die.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps us up for today.
Yeah.
But yes, like I was saying, if you were more interested into this, the whole aspect of it, you can dive deep into it. I think it's Raw Law of One with Gabriel Luga. He goes in deep dive and perspective. The whole podcast is dedicated to it. And here's a shout out for him. I doubt he even knows we exist. So
also, if you're listening to this and you get reading and there's a specific section that you would like us to cover, or a specific opinion, like you want to hear our opinion more on maybe like their version of the UFOs and what we believe versus what's there and all of that, let us know, because like I said, it's extensive.
Yes.
So if there's a specific part where you're reading it and you're like, hey, I'd like them to talk more about the UFO aspect of it, or like I said, I'm down to do like a pyramid thing with an episode, because I think, and even paranormal activity around pyramids, because I'm sure it's insane in Egypt, like going there. So
as always, stay tuned for next episode, Shadow Walker Part 5 and Dow's story, which I'll probably touch more on things in the Shadow Walker Part 5 in the episode, of course. But as always, you can catch us hidden our socials at Hidden Shadows Podcast on Instagram, Hidden the Shaw 6 on Twitter, Hidden in the Podcast 2 on TikTok, or links to all our social media. And always you can listen to us at hiddenshadowspodcast.com. And as always, catch your widows in the next one.
Yep.